Thanks, Bob, and congratulations to you and your team, and we look forward to your future success. So the haircut was just the second trip to Granite Telecommunications, which is a company out in Quincy, a very successful one, by the way, here in the Commonwealth, and employs about 1,200 people. The founder of that company lost his dad to pancreatic cancer, and 4 years ago, they were having a team meeting of all the company employees, and one of the guys who got one of the awards that was being given out had a ZZ Top type beard, and Rob Hale, who is the CEO of the company, said, you know, if you shave that beard, I'll give a $10,000 donation to Dana-Farber on behalf of my dad. And the guy said, sure, I'll do that. And so the next day, Rob heard from several of the employees who said, I'd shave my head for $5,000 if you give it to Dana-Farber. And thus was born the annual Saving While Shaving event, which they've done 3 times. They've raised $10 million for research at Dana-Farber over the past 3 years. They raised $4.5 million on Tuesday. 800 and some odd employees shaved their heads, and I would say about 20% of them were women, which was unusual. And I did it because, truthfully, I think we should all be able to put up with a little vanity in exchange for an opportunity to make that kind of contribution to that organization in particular. And I have a lot of friends and family who've had cancer and treatment over the years, some successfully and some not. And all of them always said to me how much they hated the fact that they lost their hair. And I think having an opportunity to lose mine for a few months, mine grows back, and to be able to contribute to that cause is sort of simply something that seemed like the right thing to do. And anytime you can help raise $4.5 million for a very good cause, I think the answer to that should be yes. So my message to all of you is there'll be another one of these next March. You think I'm kidding? I brought a whole bunch of people with me when I went yesterday. And it's just a little spring cut. Bob, just let me tell you how much I appreciate the chance to be here and how much we all appreciate your leadership and your collaborative spirit and your vision and your imagination with respect to the future of bio and MassBio here in the Commonwealth of Mass. Bob is a leader in this community. He's the Energizer bunny for all intents and purposes, and one of those people who is a terrific connector, networker, but most importantly at all, somebody who's always thinking about what's next, what's next, what's next, and how can we be part of the process of getting us to where we need to go. You know, Glenn, I wasn't going to bring up national stuff, but you did. So I have spent a fair amount of time thinking about this for obvious reasons. And here's what I would offer all of you on this. Gallup does a poll twice a year. They've been doing it forever, 20, 30, 40 years. And it's basically just a snapshot, right track, wrong track poll. And if you look at the history of that poll over the course of the past 30, 40 years, almost always right track goes up when unemployment goes down. And wrong track goes up when unemployment goes up. And it's literally been, those two lines have been crossing each other forever, as far back as you go on the poll that I've ever gone. Between 2010 and 2016, that didn't happen. In 2010, about 36% of the people, according to that poll, thought the country was heading in the right direction, and 64% thought we were heading in the wrong direction. The numbers for the first poll they did in 2016, and it's been a slow decline over the past 5 or 6 years, the number that thought we were heading in the right direction was around 26%, and the number that thought we were heading in the wrong direction was around 73%. And that's during a period of time when most people would argue that the economy's created a ton of new jobs, we've dug ourselves out of one of the most horrible recessions we've ever faced, and And generally speaking, things have gotten better. But when you have 73% of the country saying we are on the wrong track after 5 years of economic expansion, there's something much more significant going on underneath all that. And I don't have a good answer for that, but what I do know is that over that period of time, while inflation has been low, and the stock market's done well, and the economy has created a bunch of jobs, and interest rates have been low, price of food has gone up pretty significantly, price of energy has gone up, except for gas, pretty significantly until recently. Price of drugs, and I'm going to come back to this one in a minute, has gone up pretty significantly. The price of college has gone up pretty significantly. And for a lot of people, it doesn't feel that good out there. And I talk to people all the time. And part of what I hear from them is they think Washington is a rigged game. That message is penetrated. They think it's there basically to serve itself, not to serve the public. And they are really struggling, many of them, to figure out where their future is going to come from and how they're going to get there, and more importantly, how their kids are going to get there. And Washington is a boomtown. Everybody in Washington's doing pretty well. So they sit there and scratch their heads and wonder why it is that the rest of the country seems to be most interested in the two candidates who are the most likely to try to blow the place up. But if you get out there and you talk to people, most of them aren't very happy with anything like the status quo at the federal level. And that has a lot to do with where that dialogue's coming from. Now, on the drug piece, to come back to this for just a minute, the biggest increase that I saw, and I could be wrong about this, but the biggest increase I saw in drug pricing over the past 18 months or so was in generics. Generics. Now, 70% of all the prescriptions that get written in the United States are generics. So the vast majority of the people who access medication are accessing generics, which they've seen gone up, in some cases, by a factor of 100 to 200% over the course of the past few years. And that stings. Now, if you peel that one a little harder, there are 4,000 generics currently waiting to get approved by the FDA. And it takes 4 years, on average, for the FDA to approve a generic. Bob talked about the fact that I'm qualified to be governor, okay? I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not exciting, apparently. I'm not aspirational. I'm qualified. But let me stay on this for a minute. I get some grief from some quarters about the fact that I get very fixated on the execution and the follow-through in government. And the reason for that is there's this tendency in the public sector to overpromise and then forget about the deliver. When it takes 48 months for a generic to get approved, and you have 4,000 on the waiting list, and generic drug pricing goes up by a staggering amount over the course of a fairly short period of time, that's why I care about the delivery part. Because the delivery part is what people feel every day. Now, whether you're talking about that, or you're talking about the line at the registry, or you're talking about DCF, or you're talking about the MBTA, or you're talking about the health connector, or so many of the other elements for which people's experience is a real-world one. It's not based on the words somebody says about where they're trying to go or how they're trying to get there, who's in public life. It's about what they see and how it affects them every day. That's the stuff I'm focused on. Now, you folks have done a magnificent job of building one of the truly marvelous elements of innovation, research, product development, and big ideas anywhere in the world. I hear that all the time. And Bob threw out some of the statistics. There's plenty more. And they're stupefying when you think about how big Massachusetts is. It's not that big, but it punches 1,000,000 miles out of its weight class when it comes to almost all things healthcare. And it is poised to continue to do so going forward as this collision takes place between information technology, science, chemistry, biology, and this whole new informatics environment that we're heading into. You know, we had a recent success in securing the world headquarters for GE, which came about for a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it or overplay it. There's certainly some evidence that GE appreciated the fact that the mayor of Boston and the governor of Massachusetts, despite the fact that they're from different parties, actually seem to like each other and can talk to one another and collaborate. But there were a whole bunch of other things going on there, and they're important to keep in mind. One was they fell in love with the Seaport District for a bunch of reasons, but one of them was because it was 5 minutes from the airport, which is a really big deal to a company that has 380,000 employees around the globe. The second was the huge financial center that we have here, which means a lot of their customers and their vendors and their suppliers and the people they do business with are constantly coming in and out of here to meet with the buy side and the sell side in the finance sector. And maybe they can pay GE a visit while they're here. And they love the fact, and Jeff Immelt said this the other day when he was in Boston, that when you walk out the door, there's this incredible constellation within a few miles of institutions and organizations that are fighting for the future, as he put it, and fighting to lead the charge in so many different places and spaces that are important to a multinational, multi-product company like GE. The other thing he said was he always wants to be this was for them a generational decision. It wasn't a transactional decision. This is where do we want to be for the next 40 or 50 years? And especially where do we want to be given where we think we're going with our company and where we need to take our company over time. And so many of the kinds of institutions that we want to partner with and be part of, as we think about where this organization is going to be long after I'm gone, have been here in Massachusetts for a long time and are going to be part of your landscape far, far into the future. It's a pretty big statement. And I heard from consul generals and ambassadors who told me that they'd heard from companies located in their countries that said, what's going on in Massachusetts? GE can go anywhere. Why did they go to Massachusetts? What do we need to know about that? And I'm one of these people who believes that over time, in ways we can't even begin to predict or understand, the benefits of their presence are going to be felt in very positive and very significant ways. Now, when we think about how we play a role to help you continue to do what you do and be great going forward, for me, this falls into what I would call kind of three categories. The first one is education. Now, if you look at a lot of what the Life Science Center has been up to and involved in over the course of the past few years, a big chunk of its activity and its programming and its funding has been in education. I think that's, call it people, call it education, call it workforce, those words all work. But I think it's going to be very important for us as a Commonwealth to play in the right way and in the right places, to continue to produce the talent, not just at the PhD level, that's absolutely important, but sort of all the way down as well, so that the kinds of people that this huge cluster needs to be successful going forward are here. And the interesting thing about this one is, when I talk to governors in other states, this is always the number one issue for them. We don't have enough qualified people. Now, depending upon where you are in the country and what the industries are and how they work and all the rest, they're different. But the whole notion of qualified people at every level sort of underscores what everybody worries about the most going forward. And part of that's demographics. I'm 59, I'm literally right in the middle of the baby boom generation. The oldest folks are 69 and the youngest are 49. But that huge bubble of humanity that basically meant there was always 10 of whatever it was you were looking for, it's just not quite there the way it was. And so the desire to make sure that you maximize every opportunity you have as a state leader to make sure that the talent, not just the talent, but the qualifications, the experience, the education is there, so that businesses, employers, research organizations, and all the rest can find the people they need. Huge issue for us, and one we absolutely have to be prepared to play on. Now, I've read a lot of this stuff. I've only talked to Travis a couple times, but I've read a lot of the stuff he's working on to figure out what the next act for the Life Science Center should look like. And what I would say to all of you is, this guy is really thinking hard about this stuff. He's done a tremendous amount of work, frankly, and I thank you for this, Travis, in explaining what the Life Science Center was all about over the course of the past few years, and where the pivot points need to be and how they need to be articulated and considered going forward, so that the next act, the next reauthorization, reflects not the old game, but where the new one is going. Definitely a big role here for people. And it's one where we need to make sure that we're doing the right things so that you have the talent at every level that you need to continue to grow and be successful. But I'll tell you what's funny. The second biggest thing I've heard from this industry when people have talked to me about it is about transportation. It wasn't about technology, it was about transportation. I don't know how many of you saw the story about the Washington Metro. They shut down the whole system for a week to do basic maintenance and repair work. And they're now talking about shutting down particular lines for as long as 6 months at a time to do basic repair and maintenance work. Fortunately, we're not there yet, and we will never be there, because we're going to start to make the investments in the core operating system that are required to make sure that doesn't happen. We're going to double and triple the annual spend on the really boring stuff around tracks and switches and signals and power and the stuff that I'll never be able to cut a ribbon for. but is really what makes the system work. Half the reliability issues that people deal with every day on the transit system and the commuter rail are a function of the fact that we've underinvested in that stuff for a really long time. And we will not be able to provide you, or frankly, any of the other ancillary folks you participate with in this greater Boston community, with the system that you need to move people around if we don't make big investments in the core system. And that's going to be a fundamental, primary focus of the T and of our administration for the next several years. And by the way, if we do this right, we will get to the point where we'll be able to put more traffic through the existing system than we can today. We're like 3 generations behind on a lot of the signaling technology. We have signals we're using now on some of the lines that were installed in 1910. 1910. No wonder they get a little cranky in the winter when it gets cold. They're old. We also need to do something about enhancing our energy supply. This is a regional issue, not just a Massachusetts issue, and we're spending a lot of time with our collaborators across the rest of New England, working on a variety of initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint and improve our competitive position and make sure that the 10,000 megawatts of power that we're losing over the next 4 or 5 years don't negatively affect our ability to continue to power and support all the research and the academic activity that goes on in this community. And the final thing I just want to say is we can be, will be, and want to be a collaborator. I know enough about the math to know that $1 billion over 10 years in absolute terms sounds like a big number. But compared to the level of private and federal investment that takes place in this space over that same period of time, we're an important player, but we're a player that's playing on the edge of the rest of what's going on. So we need to make sure that the investments we make to support you and to support your industry are ones that leverage all the other stuff that's going on and basically stitches together where it's most important opportunities to be successful here. And the good news is there's a lot of collaboration in the DNA of this administration. If you talk to anybody, and I hope you do, about the team that we hired and the people we have in place and how they think about their work, we are in fact an open door administration. And the reason we're an open door administration is we don't start with the assumption that we have all the answers. In fact, most of the time we think we'll learn a lot more by keeping the door open than we will by keeping it closed. And to the extent that we can be partners, whether it's on the macro stuff around transportation and energy, or on the micro stuff around workforce development, housing, and targeted investments, those are all places and spaces we believe we should play. Because the crown jewel that you've created, which the folks at Bayer actually said was probably the most important ecosystem in medical technology and biotechnology anywhere in the world, something we don't want to just nurture. It's something we want to continue to grow and do great things with. And I get the fact there's politics, and politics is politics. But remember, folks, underneath all that, there's stuff like 48 months to get a generic approved. Now we can talk about the noise, which is really fun and interesting and sort of exciting. Or we can talk about the work. I'd rather talk about the work and then do it. And we look forward to doing that with you. Thank you very much.